The humiliation, the Crystal Palace Hotel, glittered like a jewel against Manhattan's skyline, its ballroom filled with the city's most influential figures. Natasha Reed stood at the edge of the crowd, her hand instinctively resting on her still small bump hidden beneath flowing black fabric, 6 months pregnant and desperately trying to blend into the shadows. She questioned why she'd accepted the invitation to the Children's Foundation Gala. The answer came in the form of cruel laughter cutting through the orchestra's gentle melody. Well, if it isn't my dear ex-wife," Derek Ashford's voice boomed across the marble floor. Heads turned as he approached, his arm wrapped possessively around Vivian Cross, a 23-year-old model with platinum hair and predatory eyes. "Natasha, darling, you look ... different." The word hung in the air like poison. Natasha's cheeks burned as she felt dozens of gazes sweep over her changed figure. She'd gained 30 pounds since the divorce, partly from pregnancy, partly from the stress eating that followed her world falling apart. "Derek," she managed, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Vivian?" Vivian's smile was razor sharp. "Oh, honey, I barely recognized you. Derek told me you'd let yourself go after the divorce, but... wow." She placed a manicured hand on Derek's chest. "I guess some people just can't handle change, can they, baby?" Derek's eyes gleamed with malicious pleasure. "Know what they say? Suits some people better than others. Speaking of which, did everyone hear? I just closed the Henderson Industries deal. Biggest acquisition of the year." He raised his champagne flute. "To new beginnings and leaving dead weight behind." The surrounding crowd murmured appreciatively, some even applauding. Natasha felt the familiar sting of tears threatening, but she refused to give them the satisfaction. She thought of the tiny life growing inside her Derek's child, though. He'd never know it. He'd made it clear during their marriage that children would ruin his trajectory. "Congratulations," Natasha whispered, then turned to leave. But Derek wasn't finished. "Oh, Natasha, before you go," his voice carried across the ballroom, ensuring maximum audience. "Hope you're taking better care of yourself these days. All that comfort eating can't be healthy. You used to be so... disciplined." Vivian giggled, a sound like breaking glass. "Maybe she should try yoga. I know this amazing instructor in the Hamptons. Very exclusive, of course." The circle of spectators had grown, their faces a mixture of fascination and pity. Natasha recognized several former colleagues, women who'd once sought her advice, men who'd competed for her attention. Now they watched her humiliation like a blood sport. "Actually," Derek continued, emboldened by his audience, "I'm surprised they let you in tonight. Isn't there usually a dress code?" He gestured vaguely at her outfit. "Though I suppose they make exceptions for charitable cases." The words hit like physical blows. Natasha's vision blurred as shame crashed over her in waves. She pressed her hand against her stomach, thinking of her baby, and found strength. In that small flutter of movement, "Excuse me," she said quietly, pushing through the crowd toward the exit. Behind her, "Kt." Derek's laughter echoed off the crystal chandeliers, followed by Vivian's theatrical whisper. "Poor thing. Some people just can't accept when they're not wanted anymore." As Natasha fled toward the hotel lobby, she passed beneath a portrait of the evening's honored philanthropist, a mysterious billionaire known only as V. Sterling, who donated millions to children's charities, but never appeared publicly. The woman in the painting had kind eyes and a familiar face that Natasha couldn't quite place. She didn't know that within hours everything would change, that the cruel laughter echoing behind her would soon turn to stunned silence, that the baby she carried wasn't just Derek's child, but the heir to one of America's greatest fortunes. For now, she simply ran. The breaking point, the rain hammered against Natasha's apartment window as she sat curled on her second-hand couch, still wearing the black dress from the gala. Her phone buzzed incessantly, probably Riley checking on her, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. The humiliation replayed in her mind like a broken record, each cruel word cutting deeper than the last. Some people just can't accept when they're not wanted anymore. Natasha pressed her face into her knees and let the tears flow freely. 2 years ago, she'd been Derek's equala, rising star at Morrison & Associates, the marketing firm where they'd met. She'd had her own corner office, a 6-figure salary, and dreams of building something meaningful.
Ow.
Derek had seemed like the perfect partner, ambitious, charming, and seemingly supportive of her career. The fairy tale had crumbled slowly. Then all at once it started with small comments about her priorities. Why was she working late when they had dinner reservations? Couldn't she delegate more so they could travel? His subtle undermining grew bolder after their courthouse wedding, disguised as concern for her work-life balance. When Natasha discovered she was pregnant 3 months ago, she'd been terrified but hopeful. Maybe a baby would soften Derek's edges, give them something real to build on. Instead, he'd gone cold as winter stone. "You're not seriously considering keeping it," he'd said, not even looking up from his laptop. "We discussed this, Natasha. Children are a liability at our stage." "Our stage?" she'd whispered. "Derek, we're married. We're supposed to be building a life together." He'd finally looked at her then, his expression clinical. "I'm building life? You're holding me back." The divorce papers arrived a week later. Derek's lawyer had been thorough with their prenup and her sudden unemployment. She'd been mysteriously let go from Morrison and Associates the same day Derek filed. She'd walked away with almost nothing. The apartment, the savings, even their shared friends all gone. Riley Chen had been her only constant. The one person who'd seen through Derek's polished facade from the beginning. A pediatric nurse with fierce loyalty and zero tolerance for bullshit. Riley had helped Natasha find this tiny studio apartment and had been bringing groceries every week since, as if summoned by her thoughts. Riley's key turned in the lock. "Nat, I know you're in there. I brought Thai food and chocolate ice cream. The good kind." Natasha wiped her eyes and opened the door to find Riley's concerned face, arms laden with comfort supplies. "Oh, honey," Riley breathed, taking in Natasha's tear-stained cheeks and wrinkled dress. "What happened?" Over pad thai and tissues, Natasha recounted the evening's horrors. Riley's expression grew darker with each detail. "That absolute waste of oxygen," Riley seethed. "And that plastic Barbie doll he's with? I've seen more personality in a mannequin." "Maybe they're right, though," Natasha said quietly. "Maybe I have let myself go. Maybe I'm just stop." Riley's voice was steel. "Don't you dare let those parasites make you doubt yourself. You're growing a human being while rebuilding your entire life. You're a warrior, not a victim." Natasha touched her belly, feeling the familiar flutter. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm being selfish, bringing a baby into this mess. What kind of life can I give them? I can barely afford groceries. It's a kind of life filled with love instead of manipulation," Riley said firmly. "Your kid is going to be lucky to have you as a mom." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the rain drumming a steady rhythm against the windows. Finally, Riley spoke again. "You know what's weird? That woman in the portrait at the Hotel V? Sterling. She looked familiar. I swear I've seen her somewhere before." Natasha shrugged. "Probably just one of those faces. Rich people all start to look the same after a while." She had no idea how wrong she was. In a penthouse across the city, Victoria Sterling sat staring at security footage from the gala, her heart breaking as she watched her daughter, the child she'd given up 28 years ago, flee in shame and pain. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, Natasha Reed simply held her belly and whispered promises to her unborn child, unaware that she was already one of the richest women in America. The revelation Natasha clutched her coffee cup like a lifeline, seeking refuge in the tiny corner cafe 3 blocks from her apartment. The morning after the gala felt surreal, as if the humiliation had happened to someone else she'd chosen. This place specifically because it was nowhere Derek's crowd would venture. A cramped space with mismatched chairs and the comforting smell of freshly baked pastries. She was picking at a blueberry muffin when an elegant woman approached her table. "Excuse me, dear. Would you mind if I sat? Everywhere else seems to be taken." Natasha looked around the nearly empty cafe, then at the woman silver-haired, immaculately dressed, despite the early hour, with kind eyes that seemed vaguely familiar. Something about her presence felt both calming and electric. "Of course," Natasha said, gesturing to the empty chair. The woman settled gracefully, ordering a simple black coffee when the waitress appeared. For several minutes they sat in comfortable silence. Two strangers sharing morning light streaming through rain-spotted windows. "You have beautiful eyes," the woman said suddenly. "Blue, green with gold flecks. Very distinctive." Natasha blushed. "You people always said I got them from my mother, though I wouldn't know. I was adopted." The woman's coffee cup trembled slightly in her hands. "Were you? How old were you? 3 days old?" The Reeds were wonderful parents, don't get me wrong. I had a great childhood in Portland. But sometimes you wonder, about the woman who gave you life. The stranger's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I imagine she thinks about you every single day, wonders if you're happy, if you're safe, if you ever forgive her for the choice she made." Something in the woman's voice made Natasha study her face more carefully. There was something achingly familiar in those features, the shape of her nose, the curve of her smile. "I'm sorry," the woman said, dabbing at her eyes with a cloth napkin. "I'm being presumptuous. My name is Victoria Sterling." Natasha's muffin fell from nerveless fingers. "Victoria Sterling, as in V. Sterling, the philanthropist?" Victoria nodded. "Among other things." "And you're Natasha Reed?" "How do you?" Natasha's heart began racing. "Have we met?" In a way, Victoria reached into her purse and withdrew a manila envelope. 28 years ago, I made the hardest decision of my life. I was 17, unmarried, with parents, who threatened to disown me if I kept my baby. The father was a college boy who disappeared the moment he learned about the pregnancy. Natasha's world tilted. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I've been watching you from afar your entire life. The Reeds were wonderful people. I chose them carefully. I've celebrated every achievement, worried through every setback. And last night, ... Victoria's voice broke. "Last night I watched my daughter being humiliated by a man who doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as her." The cafe seemed to spin around Natasha. You're saying you're my mother?" Victoria opened the envelope with shaking hands, revealing birth certificates, DNA test results, and dozens of photographs of Natasha at graduation, at her wedding, candid shots taken. From a distance throughout her life. "I've built an empire over the past 3 decades, Victoria continued. "Sterling Industries, Sterling Foundation, real estate holdings across 3 continents. I did it all for you, hoping that someday I'd have the courage to give you what should have always been yours." Natasha stared at the documents, her mind reeling. "This is impossible. I'm nobody. I'm broke, pregnant, and my ex-husband just publicly destroyed me." "You're my daughter," Victoria said fiercely. "You're brilliant, resilient, and stronger than you know. And as of this moment, you're also the heir to a fortune worth approximately $2.8 billion. The number hung in the air like something from a dream. Natasha laughed, a broken sound caught between hysteria and disbelief. "This is insane. People don't just... This doesn't happen in real life." Victoria reached across the table and took her daughter's hands. "I know you have every right to hate me for giving you up, for staying away so long. But I couldn't watch that monster destroy you anymore. You're carrying my grandchild, and I refuse to let either of you suffer another day." Natasha felt the baby flutter, as if responding to the revelation. Tears streamed down her face as she stared into eyes that mirrored her own. "I used to dream about you," she whispered. "Wonder what you looked like, what your voice sounded like. I always imagined you had a good reason for giving me away." "The best reason," Victoria said, squeezing her hands. "Love, and now, if you'll let me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life making up for lost time." Outside, the rain had stopped, and sunlight was breaking through the clouds for the first time in days. The transformation 3 weeks later, Natasha stood in the marble lobby of Sterling Tower, still adjusting to the surreal reality of her new life. The building's top 3 floors served as Victoria's private offices, and today they were meeting with the legal team to finalize the inheritance transfer. Marcus Webb, Victoria's longtime attorney, spread documents across the mahogany conference table with practiced efficiency. Sharp-eyed man in his 50s, he'd initially been skeptical of Victoria's sudden decision to reveal herself. But Natasha's DNA results had silenced any doubts. The primary trust contains liquid assets of approximately $1.2 billion, Marcus explained, His voice matters. Effect despite the astronomical figures. Real estate holdings add another 800 million. While Sterling Industries stock and other investments round out the portfolio, there are also several charitable foundations under your mother's control. Natasha's head spun. 3 weeks ago, she'd been rationing grocery money. Now, she owned more wealth than most small countries. "What about Derek?" she asked quietly. "What happens when he finds out?" Victoria's expression hardened. "Derek Ashford will learn what it means to underestimate a sterling woman. We have work to do." That afternoon, Elena Rossi arrived at Natasha's new penthouse apartment, temporary residence, until she decided where to make her permanent home. Elena was Victoria's personal stylist and image consultant, a whirlwind of Italian elegance with an eye for transformation. "Mamma mia," Elena breathed, circling Natasha like an artist studying a canvas. "The bone structure, the eyes you are. Already beautiful, we just need to remind the world." The next few days blurred together in a montage of appointments. Hairstylists coaxed Natasha's brown locks into sleek, sophisticated waves. A nutritionist designed a pregnancy-safe wellness plan that had nothing to do with weight loss and everything to do with glowing health. Personal shoppers filled her closet with maternity where that looked more like red carpet couture than anything she'd ever owned. But the most important transformation was happening inside. "I've been thinking about Derek's company," Natasha said. During dinner with Victoria one evening, they were in Victoria's private dining room overlooking Central Park. "Morrison and Associates has been struggling since they lost the Henderson account." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Your research is thorough. Derek thinks he's untouchable because of his Henderson Industries deal, but I know something he doesn't. Henderson's CEO, James Morrison, has been quietly shopping for a new marketing firm. He's not happy with Derek's handling of their campaign, and you're thinking... Natasha smiled, the first genuinely predatory expression Victoria had seen. From her daughter, "I'm thinking Sterling Industries needs a marketing division. And I'm thinking James Morrison might be interested in our services, especially if we can offer him something Derek never could, which is authenticity. Derek's all flash, no substance. He builds campaigns around what looks good in presentations, not what actually works. I spent 3 years watching him take credit for my strategies while delivering subpar results." Victoria leaned back in her chair, pride evident in her eyes. "You want to steal his clients?" "I want to show the world who Derek Ashford really is under all that polish," Natasha corrected. "And I want to do it publicly, spectacularly, and completely legally." The plan took shape over the following week. Victoria's connections opened, doors that Derek could never reach. Within days, Sterling Marketing Solutions existed on paper, staffed with the industry's best talent, many of whom had been quietly poached from Morrison and Associates with offers Derek couldn't match. Marcus handled the legal maneuvering with surgical precision. Elena orchestrated Natasha's public debut, scheduling strategic appearances at industry events where she could accidentally counter key players. The piece to resistance came when James Morrison himself requested a meeting with Sterling Industries. "Mysterious new marketing division head?" "He doesn't know it's you," Victoria explained as they prepared for the encounter. "He just knows that V. Sterling's daughter is personally overseeing this venture, and that she comes highly recommended by people he trusts." Natasha studied her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back was unrecognizable from the broken figure who had fled the gala a month ago. Her hair gleamed with health, her skin glowed with proper care and prenatal vitamins. Her custom-tailored maternity suit made her pregnancy look powerful rather than shameful. "I'm ready," she said, one hand resting on her growing bump. "Let's show them what a sterling woman can do." Tomorrow, Derek would receive the shock of his life. Morrison and Associates would lose their biggest client, and Natasha Reid would step out of the shadows as one of the most. The Reckoning, the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, buzzed with anticipation as New York's business elite gathered for Derek Ashford's victory celebration. He'd called the press conference to announce Morrison and Associates' unprecedented expansion, fueled by their success with Henderson Industries. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over networking clusters, While waiters circulated with champagne and confidence, Derek stood near the podium. Basking in early congratulations, Vivian draped on. His arm like expensive jewelry, he'd spent the morning giving interviews about his revolutionary approach to client relations, never mentioning that most of his strategies had been stolen from his ex-wife's playbook. "Ladies and gentlemen," the event coordinator announced, "we have a special surprise this evening. James Morrison, CEO of Henderson Industries, has an important announcement regarding his company's future marketing partnerships." Derek's smile widened as he straightened his tie. This was the moment that would cement his reputation as the city's premier marketing executive. Morrison took the stage, its expression unreadable. "Thank you all for coming. As you know, Henderson Industries has been reevaluating our marketing strategy. After careful consideration, we've decided to terminate our relationship with Morrison and Associates effective immediately." The room went silent. Derek's face drained of color. "Instead," Morrison continued, "we are proud to announce our exclusive partnership with Sterling Marketing Solutions, led by the remarkable Natasha Sterling." Every head in the room turned as Natasha emerged from the crowd near the back. She moved with serene confidence, her emerald maternity gown flowing like liquid silk. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo, diamond earrings, a gift from Victoria, caught the light with every step. Derek's champagne flute slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering against the marble floor. "Good evening, everyone," Natasha said, accepting the microphone from Morrison. Her voice carried clearly across the stunned silence. "For those who don't know me, I'm Natasha Sterling, CEO of Sterling Marketing Solutions and daughter of Victoria Sterling." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones appeared as reporters scrambled to document the shocking revelation. "Some of you may remember me as Natasha Reed," she continued, her gaze finding Derek's horrified face. Derek Ashford's ex-wife. The woman he publicly humiliated just weeks ago for, quote, letting herself go. Vivian's perfectly painted face had gone pale. Beneath her makeup, Derek looked like he might vomit. "What Derek didn't know, what none of you knew, is that I've been building Sterling Marketing while carrying the next generation of the Sterling family." She placed a protective hand on her bump. "This baby represents hope, legacy, and the future of our company." The crowd murmured appreciatively. Several women smiled with genuine warmth. "I want to thank Derek, actually," Natasha said, her tone almost conversational. "His cruelty reminded me who I really am. Not the diminished woman he tried to create, but the daughter of Victoria Sterling. A woman who builds empires, not just criticism." Morrison stepped forward. Sterling's presentation was extraordinary. She showed us marketing strategies that Derek never even proposed, backed by research he apparently never conducted. It became clear that Morrison and Associates was, frankly, stealing credit for work they didn't do. Derek finally found his voice. "This is insane. Natasha, you can't just what?" Natasha interrupted smoothly. "Succeed. Build something meaningful. Show the world what real leadership looks like." She smiled with devastating calm. "Actually, Derek, I can do whatever I want. That's what happens when you're worth $2.8 billion. The number hung in the air like a bomb. Derek's legs nearly gave out. "Oh, and Derek," Natasha added almost as an afterthought. 3 of your biggest clients called this afternoon. Apparently, they're very interested in Sterling Marketing's services. I told them we'd be happy to discuss their needs once our current client roster has room." She handed the microphone back to Morrison and walked toward the exit, her head held high. The crowd parted before her like a royal procession. Derek stumbled after her, desperation making him reckless. "Natasha, wait. You can't destroy my company over hurt feelings." She turned back, and for a moment her mask slipped to reveal the steel beneath. "I'm not destroying anything, Derek. You did that yourself the moment you chose cruelty over kindness. I'm simply showing the world what you really are, a mediocre man who takes credit for other people's work." Vivian appeared at Derek's side, her voice shrill. "This is ridiculous. You were nobody when he met you." "You're right," Natasha said calmly. "I was nobody. Now I'm somebody. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" As Natasha walked, Away, she felt her baby flutter as if celebrating. Outside, Victoria waited in a black sedan, her eyes bright with pride. "How do you feel?" Victoria asked as they drove through the glittering city. Natasha watched the lights blur past. Thinking of the broken woman who'd fled a gala 4 weeks ago? That woman was gone, transformed not by money alone, but by the knowledge that she was loved, valued, and powerful beyond measure. "Like I'm finally home," she whispered, one hand on her belly where the future grew strong and bright. Behind them, Derek Ashford stood in the wreckage of his reputation, finally understanding what it meant to be truly powerless. The sterling legacy would continue, carried by a woman who'd learned that the greatest revenge was simply becoming who you were always meant to be.